Welcome everybody to the 2020 Virtual Value Makers Conference. My name's Suzanne Robinson and I'm Director of Finance at Greater Manchester Mental Health, and I'm also the Senior Responsible Officer for Value Makers. So welcome today. I might look very lonely up here on stage, but believe me, there is a million people in this room. I'm just going to go and say hello to everybody. I am not alone. I am in the safe, capable hands of this entire studio of people and the FFF team who are here as well. So welcome to the event. Today's whole conference is about celebrating being a value maker. So it's an opportunity for us to come together as a community and just really remind ourselves how fabulous the whole of the finance function is. And that's not just people within finance, it's the people we work with too. So the people within procurement and within business intelligence and IM&T, they make up the whole of the virtual finance value makers family. So the programme that we've put together today has been developed by value makers with support from the amazing team here at FFF, and we genuinely hope that you enjoy the next couple of hours with us. So I had a conversation with a colleague a few years ago now, and we were talking about being value makers and why it's important. And something he said to me has stayed with me for those few years. And it's something that I often go back and reflect on when I'm thinking about why am I a value maker and why is it important to me. So I want everybody to think back. So what did it feel like when you got your first job in the NHS, or you got a promotion, or you did a piece of work that was recognised in your department, maybe by your manager, or maybe just one individual recognised something that you did that benefited them and made a difference. Or perhaps you've been on a training course and you finished that and you thought, yeah, actually, I've really learned something today. All of those things are things that make you feel good and make you want to come to work. So I ask, why have so many people got involved today? And I think we're at 650 value makers registered, which is our biggest audience by far. And we're absolutely delighted to have you all here today. But I imagine for all of you, it's something around those things, so that you're proud to be part of finance, that you do enjoy sharing your ideas and you do enjoy learning from others. But most of all, you want to be involved because you want to enjoy coming to work. So going back to that conversation with that colleague, what he said to me is to be a value maker is about being positive, and that is absolutely what it means for me. So today, in the next couple of hours, we're going to share with you, hopefully, some really, really good examples of that positivity from our Value Makers network. Okay, so just some quick housekeeping bits before we get into the main conference. So hopefully, everybody has been to slido.com to access the question section. There is #5967 is the code to get into Slido, and we really do encourage all of you to get your questions in, answer them, put questions to us, and take part in the polls. We want to reach as many people as possible, and we really do encourage you to do so. As you will know, with any value maker event, we want to reach out to as many people as possible. So please get on your social media, get tweeting, #VMAC2020. Let's get as many people seeing what we're about and sharing the conference with them. So last thing, as you will see from all of this, we are filming the event and we will make it available on the FFF website. Okay, so let's get into it. So our very first session is One NHS Finance Campaign. So this is a huge, huge privilege for us in the Value Maker Network to be chosen to be the ones to launch this campaign. This isn't just about value makers, this is about the whole of the NHS finance community. And this is an opportunity for us to get involved and to really question what's really great about the NHS finance function, but what could be improved and what do we want to change? So actually, COVID has given us a really great opportunity to think about that. We've done things in the last 6 months that we never thought were possible. Things that were set upon us and we just adapted to change and we innovated. We did jobs that were not part of what we were originally employed to do, but we embraced that. And through that, we've seen some really positive learning. So I think it's fair to say that everyone would agree that finance has got a really critical role to play, and we have played that throughout the whole of this pandemic. But what we want to do through this exercise is capture that. So where is the amazing innovation, those great ideas, those things that work really well? How do we capture those and seize those and make those part of how we deliver finance going forward in the short, the medium, and the longer term? Now, for us to answer that question, we need everybody's views, and we want as many people's views as possible. That doesn't matter who you are or where you work. So if you work in invoice processing, if you work in management accounts, if you're the finance director, every single view is just as important to us. So this campaign is about asking you all. It's asking you to tell us and to get involved. So we've got 16,000 finance people, and we want as many of those as possible. So I've got a short video now that will tell you how we do that and how we get involved. Roll the VT. So I hope you see from the video just how important it is to us to get everybody's involvement in this. So this platform is actually live now, and as value makers and people who are registered on this conference, we get exclusive early access to the platform. So following this conference, you can go and log on and start sharing your views. So there's all sorts of questions on there that the platform will prompt you to answer. So we're really keen to understand, what lessons did you learn? What experiences did you have, positive or negative? And how do we start to take some of that to really help us shape the future of finances? And how do we really make a difference to our patients? So my personal reflections on those questions, and something that was really important to me, I think, in the last 6 months, is just seeing the pace at which we've changed in the way that we as a finance function deliver what we do. So a lot of our staff have been working from home and still being able to deliver everything that they did. So for me, it would be great in the future that we kept some balance and we didn't revert back to everybody being in the office. Let's have some balance and some flexible working at home, but some opportunity to come together and connect with one another and be a team. So that's one of my reflections. I'm now going to, hopefully, with the power of technology, we'll be introducing a colleague of mine. And for those of you who know Simon, might have known he was the person I was talking about as part of my introduction. So Simon, are you there?
I am. Leeds calling. Thanks, Suzanne, that was wonderful. Yeah, so hello everybody. My name's Simon Worthington. I'm the Finance Director here at Leeds Teaching Hospitals, and I'm the Senior Responsible Officer for Engagement and Development for Future Focus Finance. It's absolutely wonderful to be here in my office in Leeds, talking to you at the Value Maker Conference. Fantastic. So what we talking about here with One NHS Finance, it is really the first time I've been in the NHS since 1988. I'm not aware that we have ever tried to have a conversation with the whole finance community all at one time. It's really a world-beating chance for us to come together and understand what we feel about what we do and what we need to work on to change and improve. And the Finance Leadership Council, who are they, you might say? Well, the Finance Leadership Council are the people chaired by Julian Kelly and Sandra Easton, the senior leadership of NHS Finance when it comes to financial development, including myself and Suzanne. We really, really want to hear what you have to say, all 16,000 finance staff, and also enable you to have that conversation. Now, we've emphasised already, I didn't know how many people knew there were 16,000 finance staff, but I really do want to get everybody's views in this conversation. And how can we do that? Well, this is where you as a value maker community come in, because as Suzanne's already said, you get early access to the platform, and I really encourage you to get on there straight after the conference and start giving of your views. And you can engage, obviously, in the process that way. And if every value maker did that, because there's now over 2,000 value makers, we would have 2,000 views, 2,000 inputs into that conversation. That's fantastic, but that is not 16,000. So how can we get 16,000 people involved? Well, we could wait while someone sends an email, or each one of you could think, I will speak to a colleague and encourage them to join in. And once they've joined in, it's just started thundering in Leeds. I don't know if you hear that. Once each colleague has joined in, they can get somebody else to do it. And very soon we will have 16,000 people have joined the conversation. And let's do that as well. Encourage our growing value maker communities across the country to engage in their places and in regions to do this. It really is the biggest opportunity there has been for the finance profession in the NHS to say what it feels about its own future and development. So I really encourage you to get involved. And when I go on the platform, I want to talk about one of my experiences with my team from the recent events, which I know that we felt even more together as a team. And strangely, even though we're all in our a lot of us in working from home, communication is a lot better. I know that because we do staff surveys regularly, and people's communication scores has gone up very substantially. So because we've been purposeful about that communication, that's making everybody feel much more supported and feels a better place to work. And that would encourage people to want to join the finance community in the NHS to work for the great NHS that we work for. So that's one of my thoughts. Anyway, I really do encourage you to personally get involved, and then encourage your colleagues and your teams to get involved as well. And let's get every member of the finance community in this conversation. Thanks a lot, and have a great conference.
Oh, thanks for that, Simon. That's brilliant, thanks. And probably Simon's far too modest to say, but he has had a massive impact in getting people engaged in this whole agenda, and I'm sure you'll continue to do more of that, Simon, with this particular campaign. So there is one more person that would like to encourage you to get involved in this, and that is Julian Kelly. So let's see what Julian's got to say, and roll the VT.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great day on this virtual conference. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julian Kelly, and I'm the Chief Finance Officer for NHS England and Improvement. Before I say anything else, firstly, I just want to thank you all for the work that you have been doing over the last 6 months. It's been an absolutely extraordinary year. None of us would have imagined it. The circumstances, the individual conditions under which no doubt you were all working, the stresses and strains. I just want to thank you just for everything that you have been doing. I mean, this is all about being value makers, and I think we can see the NHS finance community has really added value during this period of time. Now, life is not going to get easier, I suspect, over the next 6 months. But today we wanted to launch an initiative to really consult with the whole of the NHS finance community about how we can make the NHS finance function a great place to work, and actually to find out what can we learn from our experiences over the last 6 months in order to make the NHS better, our care for patients better, our use of taxpayers' money better, and indeed the circumstances in which we work better. It was back in the new year that actually we got all the finance directors from the NHS together and first talked about this. And at the time, there's an incredibly strong theme, which was we want to make one NHS finance function. We want to break down the barriers between commissioners, providers, regional, national bodies, and genuinely create a sense of one NHS finance function. So today, we are launching again a consultation process and engagement process with the NHS finance function across the country to ask, what can we learn? What can we do better? And we want to talk directly to the whole of the NHS finance function. I don't care what job you do. I don't care where you do it. I don't care who you work for. We want to hear from you. What can we do better? What are we already doing well? What lessons can we learn? To you, the value makers on this conference, I'm encouraging you to go back to your organisations and encourage your colleagues to really participate in this exercise as we think about how can we make one NHS finance function that is a great place to work, a world-beating place. That's my encouragement to you. Thanks again for everything that you are doing, and I really look forward to hearing from you all.
Thanks very much, Julian, for that. And thank you very much for letting us at the Value Makers Conference be in the place at which this whole hugely important campaign is launched. I think just listening to some of the things that both Julian and Simon said, I think we would all agree this is a really great place to work, but let's make it even better. So this is your conversation, it's your opportunity to shape that. Please do get involved. Please log on to the platform. Please share your views and let's make a real difference. Okay, so let's get into the conference. So our next session is Never Waste a Crisis, and I'm going to be joined by Christine Armstrong and Claudia Iton, who are going to lead this session for us. I'm just going to introduce them in a second and they can tell you a little bit more about them. But this is the part that is audience participation. So get your Slido out, get ready to join the poll and start thinking of some questions. And I'll hand over to Christine and Claudia.
Are we on?
You're on.
Oh, okay. Sort of thought something might happen. Hello. My name's Christine Armstrong and I'm a writer and I study the future of work, particularly with a focus on parenting and caring, work-life balance and gender issues.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Iton. I consult in HR, usually looking at talent management and more recently diversity and inclusion. I spent 26 years at Unilever, many of those as a senior HR director, working in very diverse and inclusive teams. Apart from that, I'm also an external director at the University of Portsmouth. And I'm pleased and excited to be joining you this afternoon at the Value Makers Conference. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So we're here today to talk about diversity and inclusion, particularly in the context of the crisis. And we thought that the first thing that it might be useful just to take a second with is to acknowledge the scale of what's happened this year. And Suzanne's kind of touched on it in terms of how everybody's working life has changed. But if we put this, and I know, don't go too far with this, it's kind of a light example, but if we think about it in the context of World War II, in World War II, the British enlisted less than 3 million troops, and we spent 6 years moving them and training them, and they moved around Europe and they changed tactics. But just this year, between the 20th of March and the 23rd, that weekend, 8 million people in the UK went from working in their normal place of work to working at home. And just in 2 weeks in April, 9 million people were furloughed. So the scale of this change is enormous. If we look at civilian deaths during World War II, we're sort of at 60-odd thousand. And that's, of course, over 6 years. So the scale of what's going on now is completely incomprehensible. And we won't know for decades, really, the impact on it. But what we are starting to see is how hard this has been on certain groups. And I'm going to talk a little bit about women, and particularly women who care. But pandemics historically have hit women harder than they have done men, partly because of caring responsibilities. And there's been a vast amount of data during this about how much more caring women have been doing, how they're 50% more likely to have been made redundant or furloughed, to have lost out on hours, and very likely to be struggling with childcare, particularly when schools weren't sitting. Now schools are back, lots of people are starting to feel better, but it's really fragile. I've done 4 webinars this week, and on all of them I've spoken to people whose children have already been sent home from school. So it feels like a very fragile state at the moment.
Thank you, Christine. And when Christine and I were thinking about what we would discuss with you at this session, we couldn't avoid the 2 defining issues of 2020. I mean, there's several others, but 2 really stand out. Christine has referred to the pandemic, but there's also been an eruption, if I call it that, since the death of George Floyd at the end of May in the US. And that has sparked a conversation around Black Lives Matter and a complete social justice reform dialogue that's ongoing. And I remember at the time, many people had it to say that it was really graphic, really horrible what happened in Minnesota. But that's so unlike the UK. And that made me pause and wonder, well, what is it like in the UK? So I had a look at some of the data that would sort of define what are the life chances like between someone who's Black and someone who's not growing up in the UK. And if you start before birth, you look at maternity, the statistics tell us that Black women are 5 times more likely to die from complications of pregnancy than their white counterparts. In the US, it's 3 to 4 times, so we beat them on that one. And it continues through the course of life. There's early education, there's higher education, there are rates of employment, there's the criminal justice system, and on and on. And then if we circle back to health, we can see again, we're all familiar with what's happened with the mortality figures coming out of COVID. And we know again that the Black community has paid proportionately a higher price. Black men are 3 times more likely to die from the disease than their white counterparts. Black women 2.5 times more likely. But what does this all mean for us? How do we respond? How do we change? How do you, as the finance teams, change and respond to this? I think this presents an opportunity, and I was really pleased to hear Suzanne touch on that in her opening remarks. These 2 crises present an opportunity for us to recast what's normal and do things in a different way. The Black Lives Matter issue has made it almost impossible for us to avoid conversations around ethnicity and equity and how we manage those in our organizations. And I know one of the objectives you've set yourselves is to see stronger representation right through your organization, not just at the lower levels, but in the more senior positions for Black and other minority ethnic groups. And this is an opportunity to have those conversations that can predicate those moves. So we're hoping to explore some of those opportunities and ways in which you can look at that as we go this afternoon.
But before we do that, we wanted to very much make this your session. So if you can get into the Slido, Suzanne, you might have to help us out here. Sorry, doing your mic just as I mentioned you. But we've got a question up there, and we'd love as many of you as possible to answer it. So hopefully you've been able to get into the Slido website. But the question is, what issue is most on your mind? Of all the things that you'd like to change and get right as we come out of this crisis or these crises, which of these are really important to you? And that gives us a bit of a clue as to where perhaps we might be able to help the most. So we'll keep going. There's like 150 of you have voted, so we'll give it another minute. Supporting women coming in at a sterling 1% at the moment. So you obviously think you're doing brilliantly on women, which is very good news. Conversations about race. So the big one coming out at the moment seems to be hybrid working. Way that the screen is structured, I can't actually see what the percentage is on that, but keep voting. Let's keep going. 154, a couple more votes. Anyone else wanting to get involved? Some people are struggling to hold it together. Some people want to talk about Black Lives Matter and race. Some people want to talk about supporting families and other members. And some people want to manage, most people seem to be in the practicalities of hybrid work. Suzanne, can you see the right-hand side of that, managing the practicalities of hybrid work? What is the percentage? We can't see it on our screen.
So we've got 200, well, it's 210 now, 213 and keep
213.
going. So we've got 48% on managing practicalities of hybrid working.
Yeah. Okay. And the rest, the second one is supporting family and carers and families, and I've got that at about 16%.
Yes.
Okay, so the practicalities of hybrid work. Claudia, where to start? So I can jump in if you want, but we come back to it. But I've actually been doing some work with some of you, and if you were on the course the last 3 weeks, hello. I've been doing some course the last 3 weeks with some of your finance teams, working on the practicalities of hybrid work, and some of the stresses that people have talked about are really, really familiar across lots of businesses. So some of them are people missing out on the human contact and finding it more difficult to get stuff done. So things that might have been a casual conversation taking 10 minutes now being booked into a Teams call for an hour. Some of that time, some people frustrated that too much of that time is then taken up by small talk and catching up with people, and other people being desperate for human contact and feeling that they go from one Teams call to another all day and end up completely exhausted and ragged and tired and grumpy, and also feeling that they've got so much incoming communication across different platforms that they can't get anything done. Lots of complaints that all meetings seem to default to an hour, and so they don't get many breaks, and so people end up tired, and lots of people saying that they respond to the communication that comes in. So if they get an email, they respond on an email. If somebody invites them to a Teams call, they accept the Teams call. So a kind of a sense from the group that the NHS is such a big beast, and you're a cog in that wheel. It's really difficult to assert your own control over some of those bits of it, and that being at home, dealing with whatever you might be dealing with at home, whether you're feeling lonely and missing contact, or whether you're overwhelmed by contact and the people you have to care for in your home, that actually it's been quite difficult. There are, of course, and it's important to say, is people who have loved it. You know, people who have walked their dogs and done more exercise and really enjoyed it. But there are lots of people struggling with it. And we've spent 3 or 4 weeks discussing this, and it's difficult to consolidate that into a few lines. But I think the things that have really resonated for people are about taking control of the things that you can. So thinking about meetings that you might be able to decline, or say, I don't have an input for this, so you know, come back to me when I can add something. Having conversations with team members about the length of meetings and saying, could we do 45-minute meetings? Because if we save 15 minutes a day, every day, then that's an hour a week, and it's a week a year in time that we could save just by moving meetings from 1 hour to 45 minutes. Is that a conversation that you could have with your teams? Is it a suggestion you could make and try and do for next week? Could you move your Monday morning team meetings, which may be a long raft of updates on ongoing projects and deadlines that could be done on a document, and just shift those over to a document where you just flag anything for discussion, and you go into those meetings, you have energetic conversations, and then you pop out and get on with your day. But really thinking hard about the energy that you convey, thinking about how to use time really well so you get people's input, and making sure, I'm going to hand over to Claudia in a second, to not to fall into in-groups and out-groups, because one of the problems with technology is we tend to talk to fewer people, so we end up with smaller groups.
We do. And thank you, Christine. That's something I'm going to urge you to be sensitive to. There'll be some people you find who may not log on to the calls when everyone's invited. There are others who might log on and they're very quiet. And those are the ones you really need to be careful about. Who are the people who tend to always be there and you know, right, switched on? And let's take care and put our arms around those who find it a little harder to stay connected. Is there some way you can reach out one-to-one and maybe have a call instead of a video session with someone who may be struggling and find it intrusive, but there's all this succession of video calls? I mean, there's the whole range of personalities and types, and people respond to this differently. Some people really struggle with the constant endless stream of video video interaction? Is there someone you can reach out to and maybe set up a social call with, just to find out how they're doing, or to give them an opportunity to talk about something that they don't feel comfortable bringing up in the larger, wider session? Really, as team leaders in particular, it's really important to put an arm out for these people. They tend to be the ones who, if we were all in the office, they would be the ones who would not be going for the after-work drinks, who would not necessarily be around the coffee machine, sharing in the jokes or catching up with the football scores. These are the people that we want to make sure do feel part of the team. And it means that you have to be that much more careful in working in a hybrid way to do that through the digital connection. But in an odd way, it's can actually be a little more visible. So that's half your work done for you in terms of who's not being plugged in via this route.
There's another dynamic with hybrid work, which I think is really interesting. I'm going to show you a book now, and the title of it may offend some of you, but it's actually not anti-men at all. But it's about, the title of the book is Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders and What to Do About It, which sounds very offensive, but it's written by a man. And it's not actually anti-men. I think his publisher must have pushed him to a controversial title in the hope he'd get lots of extra sales. It's really about how we read confidence as competence. And there was a lovely line, I don't know if any of you listened to Jane and Fee, unfortunately. There's a lovely line that they quoted, which was, "Let me interrupt your experience with my confidence." And in a crisis, we're all very drawn to confidence. It's sort of part of our DNA. We look around and we think, who's the loudest voice? Who's the biggest person who seems to know the answer? And that can be very appealing, but those people aren't the people with the best answers. The people with the best answers are the people who are analytical, who look at the research, who go away and think about 3 options, who take soundings, who test ideas. And this has been proved. This is particularly true, by the way, of doctors. They've done lots of research into doctors. And if you go in and they say, oh, yes, Claudia, you've got pneumonia, tick. They're much more likely to be wrong than if you go in and they say, well, it could be pneumonia, but there's 3 or 4 other things I just want to have a look at and just check. Much higher success rate. And the same is true for the rest of us. So in a crisis, just be aware of whether you are being drawn to more confident people and not listening to those quieter, more thoughtful voices, or whether you might be that voice, and whether there are more opinions and more challenge you can bring in for the team that make people feel more included.
And building on that, I think if you find yourself as that person who's more analytically inclined, who reflects more before jumping in with a response, maybe if you look at this as an opportunity time, maybe this is an opportunity for you to actually convene some people around your way of operating. You can decide when you can pull people together after you've done your thinking and your reflection, and you can actually structure your response in a really constructive way. There are ways in which you can actually take the initiative in a way that accommodates your style.
Suzanne, I know there's some questions coming in. Do you want to post them, or shall we keep on this vein?
I've got a couple of questions that have come in, so if I introduce them to you both now, and then you can perhaps comment. So the first one has come in that says, Black Lives Matters conversations is not high on the poll. Is this because it does not affect the wider population?
That wasn't my question, by the way.
Perhaps you'd like to start, Claudia.
Why do you think people aren't asking about it, Claudia?
To be honest, I've noticed this phenomenon in a couple of meetings that I've had recently, and I think there are a number of factors at play. There is this concept of allyship. I don't know how familiar people are with that word. It's become in vogue in recent weeks and months. And a lot of people are really keen to be allies. They want to be on the right side of this issue, but it's daunting. The first problem is, oh my God, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to upset someone? Am I going to embarrass myself? I wish it would just go away. It's like the glaring elephant in the room. But what I want to say to people is, the more we talk about it, the easier it gets to talk about. And it doesn't have to be sackcloth and ashes, as I'm also fond of telling other people. There is an actual upside to the diversity conversation. And what it is when you bring more and more diverse people into the room, figuratively and otherwise, you actually have a richer conversation. You have, and there's all the research that's been done, you'll be familiar with it, no doubt, better innovation, better profitability, better outcomes, better performance, less groupthink, and better quality of thinking overall. And I would dare say more fun. So I encourage people to don't let the race issue be something that daunts you. Let's come to grips with it. Let's embrace it and actually make it deliver, because there's something in there, and it's not just pain and grief. Trust me.
I think there's something on this as well, that white people particularly, we feel it's very rude to talk about these things, or we've been trained that it's rude, and even in some ways rude to even think about it very much, and that if we weren't racist, then we wouldn't think about it. These things wouldn't be on our agenda. So perhaps by raising it, that indicates we are in some way racist, and that would be awful, and we want to be anti-racist. So I feel like actually there's a point, and some of this, Claudia, you know, I love talking to you about this and working with you on these things. It really increases my awareness that actually being more analytical about insider groups and outsider groups is really helpful. And I've sort of got an equivalent of the school gate. And if you look at the school gates in the morning, I've got a couple of kids, and you look around and you go, there are groups, right? There's a group of dads, there's a group of black mums, there's a group of Russian mums, there's a group of Chinese mums, and some of that's race, and some of there are other things, you know, that link people together. But if I look at those groups, it makes me think, gosh, instead of just talking to the same people every day, which is the easy automatic thing to do, all the, you know, Bowden mums probably like me, I kind of go, right, I need to embrace all of those groups. You know, I need to know people in all of them and enrich my experience, but also add more value to school in terms of volunteers and including people in projects. So I find that quite a sort of helpful way to kind of break through a sort of what do I do in a very practical way.
Yes, and I think, thanks for that, Christine. And I think you have touched on perhaps one of the real spinning points. What I mean by that is the thing that really opens the floodgates of whether this is easy or difficult. When you start walking up to people at your school gates and approaching them as just what they are, people, and not, ooh, that's that type, that's that group, then you're opening yourself up to understanding all sorts of new possibilities, all sorts of new lived experience that you're not yet privy to. And it's enriching. It really is enriching. And it also lifts those people up as well. They feel seen. They feel that there is a level playing field after all. They're starting to come into the room. And those simple acts that we do in terms of how we acknowledge people, simple things like taking the trouble to pronounce names correctly, names that are considered difficult from an English perspective, that really, a little goes a really long way. And it's those very simple, basic steps that can provide the infrastructure to building and creating the outcomes that we want. Because I go back to it, soapbox warning everyone, go back to it. When we look at the stats in terms of what's going on in our wider society, there clearly is work to do. There's something out there which says that at every stage in life, the playing field isn't level. How do we start to correct that? Do we just throw our hands up and say, well, forget it, you know, I can't do anything about that? It starts by those little incremental steps in terms of how we show up. And as we have more and more senior positions of responsibility, then there's more we can do. We can make sure that our recruitment is balanced, and that we do our best to take bias out of those scenarios. We can make sure that our talent conversations are the same, but then I'm getting a little more prescribed here. I want to keep it really, really entry level. The most basic thing you can do is walk up and say hello to someone who doesn't look like you. That's a start.
I've got another question that's just come in, and picking up the number of delegates who expressed hybrid working has been a real challenge for them. And you talked a little bit about in-groups and out-groups, and how do you balance that with how important inclusivity is to us all? One of the questions asks, what do we do where management expects staff to have their camera on in Teams meetings, and not all staff are comfortable with that, particularly if they don't want to share their home environment? What's your thoughts?
No, you took a bigger breath than I did. It's definitely yours.
Yes, it resonates. I hear that, and I think sensitivity is no bad way to greet this with. There will be some people who find this, and I referred to it earlier, really, really intrusive. And what do you as a manager have to lose by respecting that? Some people with the lockdown and with homeschooling, given their circumstances, found it really difficult to create a discrete place within their households where they could actually interface with the office. We need to be sensitive to that. Ultimately, and this has been one of the discussions underpinning the whole presenteeism and flexible working conversation, ultimately, the thing that matters are outcomes. Is someone productive? Are they doing what you need them to do? And if that person can join your meeting and stay on audio, or switch their mic on and off when they need to be, and leave the audio off because the video off, because that makes them more comfortable, then cut them some slack. Let them do that. And as I say, maybe you can treat with them one-on-one to have a conversation to better understand what that's like. Or maybe you're in a position to provide some support to their home circumstances where they can create some sort of a discrete area, maybe not far away from home, even if it's not within the office. So there are lots of ways around it. My counsel would be approach it with sensitivity, because I think it's very real. Christine, you were going to add.
Much nicer person than I am. Okay, so I would agree approaching it with sensitivity and having a conversation, but there are backgrounds that you can put up, and one of the things that I would be really keen to explore is what are the real reasons they're not putting their camera on. Is it because they personally are shy? Is it because of the background in their home, in which case what can you do to fix that? Or are they in some way disengaged or unhappy? And are they in fact withdrawing for some other reason, something that they're not being heard, they're not being seen, they don't feel valued? And I find, I do lots of corporate webinars, and I find very interesting human behaviours around who puts their camera on and who doesn't. And the people who don't are often distracted or disengaged, or they feel they have to be on the call but they have nothing to add, or they don't think it's valuable. And that is an important statement. You need to listen to that. Why don't they think it's valuable? Why do they think you're wasting their time? So I would be really quite keen to get under the skin of that. And if you've got a big team where a lot of people aren't putting their camera on, then I would posit a suggestion in your brain that you are not engaging them for whatever reason. They're not energized. Potentially they are a bit alienated. They may not be as productive as you want. And you might want to be really thinking about that. I told you I wasn't as nice as you, Claudia.
Yes, you're the yin to my yang.
I've got another question actually that probably just follows on that theme a little bit. So I think over the past 6 months we've really embraced the technology to help us continue to do our work, but there is a challenge that comes with that, and a couple of questions have come in saying we're chained to our screen working virtually, and we feel really guilty when we take a break. This wasn't necessarily the case in the office. Is this the culture that we might be creating? So what's your advice around that? Because I absolutely agree with that. Whenever I've worked from home, you do feel guilty just to go and get a coffee, and you find you don't do it, and you work all the way through the day, and that's not what we want to necessarily encourage.
It's terrible for your productivity. I've been working with this team for the last 3 weeks. Put in your breaks, take your lunch break. I've heard lovely examples from your teams. People going for a bike ride together with colleagues before work, socially distanced, and then getting back to at 9 o'clock to really lift their energy, doing virtual walking meetings at lunchtime where they have a catch up on their phones while they're walking around whatever local park they're in, having virtual coffee breaks that people can check into. It's really important culturally that people get breaks. We know people are struggling to separate work and home at the moment. We know that's bad for their mental health, it's bad for their productivity, and bad for their concentration. So if you're a team leader out there, be, showing yourself, taking those breaks, talking about it, talking about doing a little, 10-minute HIIT exercise routine or yoga before work. Because the worst thing we can do is stagger downstairs in the morning and sit down at our computers and then bash away all day and end up rather depressed. We've got a long winter coming ahead with restrictions, with darkness. We've got to work really hard to look after our own and our team's resilience and mental health. And take those breaks, please. Talk to your team, have conversations about it, and share what you're doing.
This is one where it really matters what the leader does. And it's not good enough just saying and inviting people to take those breaks if you're not seen to be doing it yourself. So walk the talk, team leaders, please. Because when you do that, you really give your people permission to follow in your footsteps. And as Christine says, the benefits just flow from that.
And the other thing which I've been hearing a lot about is the lack of time to do any deep, proper, focused work, because you're constantly ping, email, instant. And we go into a mode then of instant reaction. We don't think about things deeply or analytically. We miss options. We rush things. We're not doing our best work. So I would be encouraging people to be having conversations in teams, putting 2 hours a day in to do some really focused work and saying, I'm not going to be easily available in that time. If you need me, you can ring me if there's a crisis. I'm not going anywhere, but I really need to get these things achieved this week, and this is the time I need to do it, rather than agreeing to calls that last all your working day and then at 7 o'clock at night thinking, oh, I've got to write that report now because it's due on Friday and haven't started. So, taking a bit of control. I know that's not easy, but, try, talk about it.
I've got another question here that's just come in. So we've talked a lot about teams, and the definition of what a team may be can vary. So what about people who aren't as involved in the team? How do we make sure that people don't feel isolated and therefore don't know how to get involved or to talk? And if you define a team on Microsoft Teams, that might automatically exclude people. So how would we make sure we do pick up people who do feel isolated and not part of what was previously a team in the office?
Tricky one, that, Suzanne, and it comes back again to being sensitive and noticing these people. If they don't themselves put their hand up and say, what about me? The leader needs to really have their radar really tuned to see these people. And it could start with, as we've just referred to, the video being off on a call, or people not feeling disengaged, and therefore the behavior follows from that. A one-on-one conversation is a good place to start with the team leader and someone who might fall into this category, to explore ways in which they could be involved, in which they can contribute. Now, sometimes in service of that goal, to not have incessant calls all day long, there may be some groups that are set up where everyone's contribution isn't required, and that might be what's behind someone not being included in a particular group that's been set up. It's helpful if those criteria are clear so that people aren't left to wonder or guess why they've been excluded, that dreadful word. So the usual guidance comes in here. Team leaders, antenna up. Try and be really aware through the behaviors and through your own scans, who's involved, who's in the in-group, and who's on the periphery. Those on the out, try and put your arms around them. First, to listen and understand and try and determine what's going on, and then find a way to reel them in.
There's one issue which has come out quite a lot in my conversations, which has been keeping in touch with clinical staff. So clinicians that you might deal with in the finance department, and finding those people hard to reach. Maybe they're not responding to messages, maybe they're just not engaging. And they might be people that previously you could walk down the hall and go, oi, can we have a chat about your budgets for next year? Can we have a chat about this? And one thing that I would suggest is just thinking about how to reach out to them in a way that isn't just you always asking for stuff, but what might be going on with them. Writing something interesting in your messages, Zoe and I were talking about you or whatever, trying to build a bit of a human connection and just reach some of those people that you normally would be in your network, and just taking the time even to think about who those people are and how you could just maybe once a week or once a month just make sure that you're refreshing some of those relationships that are important to you.
Thanks, that's really great. I've probably got time for one just really quick question. It's I'm not sure how I would start a conversation about Black Lives Matters. Have you got any tips for us? It's a nice way for us to end with some practical advice.
Jump straight in. If you want to have a conversation about this or anything, if you bring your curiosity and your sincerity, those will take you far. If you invite someone, if you want to speak with one of your colleagues around Black Lives Matter, rather than having a room full of people, if it's a one-on-one, I think that's probably a better place to start. If I were you, I'd be curious to understand how has this landed for you? So describing personal experiences, and be prepared to explain how it's touched you as well, where you felt puzzled, where you felt bemused, where you felt whatever the range of emotions are. Be prepared to have an exchange that is sincere and curious. I think those two words, those two aspects to your approach will take you really, really far. And what I want to come back to is something I said earlier. Don't be scared of having the conversation. Don't leave it unheld. Have that conversation. The first one you have makes the second one easier, and. It can go from there. But take the job, take the plunge, have the conversation. It's not horrible, trust me.
So that's absolutely brilliant advice for us. So thank you hugely to both Christine and Claudia for that fabulous session. And thanks to everybody who sent questions in. It's really made a really great session. I just want people to reflect on that actually, given the way we introduced the One NHS Finance session. I think this gives us food for thought for the things that we might want to feedback through that platform. So what we heard through that session that makes me, yeah, that's how I'd like the world to change. We'll get those ideas in, and let's get them part of that big conversation. Okay, so thank you very much again. Now it's time for us to take a quick break. We'll be back in 10 minutes. We're going to have a countdown clock on the screen to let us know when to come back. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the second half of our conference. I hope you've all had a chance to have a quick drink, a quick break, walk the dog really quickly, and let's get back into the second half of today's session. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the best practice market stalls. So for those of you who've been to the conference previously, you'll know that this is one of the highlights of what we do. So we encourage people from all across the country, all different finance teams come and they run a stall themselves and they share with us some of the great best practice that they've done in their own organisations, and that starts to spread it across the whole of the country. Now, we didn't want to lose that this year, so we've come up with a slightly different way of doing it. So I will show you a video in just a second, but what you need to do is take a look at these different 13 market stalls, and anything that sparks an interest, then log on to the FFF website and register for sessions that will be running virtually throughout October. You can book onto them now, but let's take a look and see if there's anything that interests you. So let's roll that VT.
Hi, my name's Ed Berry and I'm a Programme Finance Director at MFT. I'm recording this on the last working day of August, and I'm pleased to say a few moments ago at 12 o'clock we closed our ledger on month 5. It's the 5th month of our day 1 journey, and to get where we are certainly hasn't been easy, but we've done it with a lot of help from trusts that are already working to day 1. We've certainly learned a lot through the process, and I'm sure there's much more we will continue to learn. There's lots of benefits from doing day 1 reporting, and if you're willing, we would like the opportunity to share those with you. Even if you choose not to do day 1, there's still lots of benefits you can take from it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Carrigan from Midlands and Lancashire CSU. We have provided a small group of practices, circa 23,000 patients, with financial support to reconcile IRIS accounts, prepare 2018-19 and 19-20 final accounts, create a new chart of accounts in Xero, set up and prepare monthly management accounts, and support and advise on receipts and payments and financial governance. Even through lockdown, we've been able to continue this work with the support of the practices. This has all gone very well, and the practices want to keep the CSU to continue forward with management and year-end accounts for 2021. Thank you.
We at Midlands and Lancashire CSU are always looking to improve processes through technology for the benefit of patients and customers alike. Take a look at our new app that transforms mental health assessments. The process for getting patients the care they need when they're in crisis hasn't changed since the 80s. Approved mental health professionals have been spending hours trying to find qualified and available doctors using manual contact lists, and all the while a patient remains waiting to receive potentially life-saving care. Doctors who need paying have had to wait months to get paid due to paper-based claim forms, and the whole process has many IG risks. Our finance team needed to make a difference. Through our new app, CCGs can now commission a different service, a much improved one that streamlines the whole assessment and payment process, bringing significant benefits to the ICS and local authorities. Please join us to learn more.
Hello, I'm Ellie Forsyth from Lancashire Teaching Hospitals. For our Best Practice Market Stall, we're going to be sharing our work on the use of FFF toolkits as part of the Towards Excellence accreditation. We've recently become Level 3 re-accredited for the 3rd time and look forward to helping other organisations on their journey. During the workshop, we will talk through the toolkits we have used, how we have improved processes within our department, for example, to our intranet site and non-PO process, and we will also give insight on how to evidence this as part of the accreditation and how we applied them in our continuous improvement working groups. So if you're coming up to your accreditation or just want to learn more about the toolkits, then please sign up to our Best Practice Market Stall, where we'll be sharing resources, examples and answering any of your questions. Thank you.
The next Leadership in Action programme for us is an exciting internal empowerment opportunity made up of a combination of bespoke learning workshops and departmental change projects. Essentially, it's a platform to step up, test and practice leadership skills to deliver strategic outcomes. This was a real challenge as it moved away from purely continuous improvement activities and became more about our culture and behaviours. It gave us an environment to develop our own reputation and self-image as leaders, increase our confidence and make rewarding changes against corporate objectives.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hebblethwaite from Chorley South Ribble and Greater Preston CCGs. Just over 12 months ago, the Organisation Development Group, OD Group, was formed to help the CCGs to progress on the delivery of the Organisation Development Plan. Members of the group are representatives from the CCG's business units and from all Agenda for Change band levels. Our management executive team understand that organisation development is ongoing rather than an annual or ad hoc initiative and have committed to giving their support to the work that is being undertaken. Through feedback gleaned from away days and staff surveys, two key areas our workforce told us that they wanted to improve were staff wellbeing and training and development for everyone. If you would like to find out some of the development and activity that has taken place at our CCGs, then come and join me at the VMAC 20 market stall.
What makes a great place to work and engages staff by providing a supportive environment? As with other trusts, Alder Hey experienced issues which impacted on staff satisfaction, such as financial and target pressures creating suboptimal working environments. The number one place to work was formed from a small, diverse group with the aim of improving staff well-being, enabling staff to engage in individual and group development by giving a direct voice, social interaction, reward and recognition, and learning and development. This has improved the working environment, more vital since COVID-19, as most of the team are now working from home.
Hi everyone, my name is Natasha Monroe and I am a sponsee on the FFF sponsorship program. This is a 2-year program providing career sponsorship for high potential NHS finance staff who are from groups underrepresented at director level. Please join myself and other sponsees on the 15th of October for an online sponsorship surgery where you can learn more about the program as well as hear the experiences of current sponsees and sponsors. I look forward to seeing you then.
Hello, my name's Mark Songhurst and I'm a value maker here at Leeds Teaching Hospitals. We've been for 3 years running large timeout events for our organisation. They've had the benefit of allowing staff to mix, to learn new skills, to hear from external speakers and to actually understand what's going on in the organisation. There's a great deal of value placed on what we do on the time out. It's not just a case of meeting up for a nice break. There is education opportunities, there is chance to actually tackle some of the issues and to hear from people like our executives that normally people wouldn't get a chance to do. And I want to, in a workshop, talk through all of these, to share my experience and to give people the chance to actually run these events themselves, whether that's physically or online. Thank you.
Each year, new pay scales are published in addition to any changes with national insurance, superannuation and tax rules, which resultantly means each organisation's costing models need to be updated, which means up to 233 provider models and 191 CCG models. Generally, all are just plain updates without any new functionality and often differing interpretations across the NHS. What if we value makers created a single model, one which we developed and enhanced together, but updated centrally and pushed out across our organisation? Problem solved. Join this session to see what has already been done, how it can benefit you, and how you can input into future updates.
Hi, my name is Beth and I'm from Lancashire Teaching Hospitals. Here at Lancs Teaching, we have been hosting careers fairs for students since 2015. Normally hosting 2 a year, one at each of our hospital sites, this year we have had to change our approach in light of COVID. Join our workshop to find out a little bit more about how we host these events internally within our hospitals, how we have changed in light of COVID, and how we view these events going forward. These are a great opportunity for students from around the local area to come in and learn about various careers in the NHS, not actually just within finance, but actually across the entire trust. You can also learn about how we ensure that students then have the opportunity to do work experience and volunteering within the trust in order to progress their careers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenny Harcourt from Leeds Community Healthcare, and we're going to be working with Linda's team to talk to you about lean thinking, how we actually manage to put that in place, empowering staff to make small changes because they all add up.
Great stuff, I'm sure you'll agree, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody there, because everybody there has volunteered to run these sessions, so get yourself booked on in October, and thanks once again. We are nothing without our value makers, so thanks. Right, let's move on to the next session. So now we're going to do another launch, and this is our Doing Our Bit. So this is, again, I've got another video that's going to come up in just a little while to show what this means for everybody. But this is about us reflecting during the whole of COVID. We've done even more phenomenal things as value makers. And this is a toolkit for us to use and share some of that brilliant work. So I'm going to roll the VT again.
It has been an extremely tough year for the NHS. No one can argue with just how amazing staff have been in stepping up to face the unprecedented challenges thrown their way, and with the admirable resilience they have shown when adapting to changes never seen before in NHS history. Working with the Value Maker Network and finance staff from across the country, we have heard and learned about some fantastic and inspiring initiatives from different finance teams that have been put in place in response to COVID-19. To celebrate this work and our fabulous Value Maker Network, we are proud to launch Doing Our Bit, which showcases the successes of finance teams during COVID-19. This interactive document includes best practice of the fantastic work that individuals, teams, and organizations have been delivering throughout the pandemic. Content has been categorized into 4 different themes: health and well-being, resilience, redeployment and volunteering, and innovation. Within each, you can find video interviews, blogs, quotes, and photos from different organizations and value makers sharing their best practice so that we can all learn and look at implementing ourselves as standard practice going forward. Doing Our Bit is all about celebrating our wonderful Value Maker Network and all our finance colleagues who have shown such courage, commitment, and compassion this year, which has acted as a real reminder that we genuinely do have the very best healthcare system in the world. We hope that you take inspiration from the examples included and take real pride in the way that the finance community and Value Maker Network has responded throughout the pandemic. To access the live document, please visit www.futurefocusedfinance.nhs.uk/Doing Our Bit.
Brilliant. So again, I encourage you to go on, log on and have a look at that. There's some really great stuff in there, some brilliant blogs, some brilliant examples of the great work that we've done, things that we never could have imagined we'd do, and include myself in that. Who would have thought I'd be here saying roll VT? It's a crazy world. Okay, so let's move on to the next session, which is the panel session, celebrating our success through COVID. So I'm going to be joined by some people, hopefully on screen now. I'm expecting Caroline, I'm expecting Beth, and I'm expecting AK. Yes, I can see you there, guys. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves and tell everybody a little bit about what you do first, and then I'm going to launch into some questions. So I'm going to start with AK.
Hello,
hi, AK.
My name's AK. I'm an anaesthetist based in Leicester, and I'm also the clinical lead for engagement at Future Focused Finance.
Great, thanks. And shall we go to Caroline? Hi, Caroline.
Hi, hello. My name's Caroline. I'm a chief executive. I'm chief executive in London of a group of hospitals called the Royal Free. I'm also the president of the HFMA, and I'm a very proud accountant and have a long history with FFF. Hello, it's nice to be here.
Thanks, Caroline. And then finally, but not least at all, Beth. Hi, Beth. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Beth. I'm a Deputy Financial Advisor at Lancashire Teaching Hospitals, and I am also the Value Maker Regional Lead for Lancashire and South Cumbria and a FACE Network Leader.
That's great. Thanks, everybody. Welcome. So any questions that people have, if you want to start getting those in on Slido, I'm going to kick things off with a couple for each of our panellists, but please do get those in, and I'll make sure I bring the toughest questions to the panel. Let's start with, I'm going to start with Caroline. So Caroline, we know that even though you've left the world of finance and you're now a chief executive, you have not severed your ties from finance, and you've continued to share blogs and updates of your experiences at your trust throughout COVID. Now, can you choose just one thing that you are most proud of in terms of your organisation's response to COVID? What do you think that would be? I know that's tough, but just one.
Oh, I didn't realise it'd be one. Okay, so I'm going to say it's doing the right thing, but I'm going to expand on that. So I think everybody had a visceral sense of common purpose, didn't they? And I could all say that. But I think we did the right thing. And so that ranged from even where we weren't sure about the money, we helped build the Nightingale Hospital in the Excel Centre. People have lots of views about that, but actually as an insurance policy, it was amazing. And we did the right thing. We really went large on supplies of PPE, even when we weren't entirely sure, about we never abandoned financial governance, but we did the right thing at all times. And I'm so proud of all my team, both clinical and non-clinical, for doing the right thing. I'll stop.
Wow, that's great. That's really great. And I think, all of us can share similar stories about how we responded to. So that's great to hear. I'm now going to go to AK, who is a glutton for punishment. You put yourself into this finance world, but you're a pro now because you're very experienced in working with us accountants, aren't you? So AK, it would be really great to hear what your perspective as a clinician on how non-clinical staff and clinicians have really pulled together during the pandemic.
I think, as Caroline was saying, we all had a common purpose. I think before in the early stages, there was a lot of focus on procurement with getting hold of PPE, and we were really lucky. Up in where I work in Leicester, our procurement department got us loads of PPE. We were, I don't think we ever felt we were running out. The estates guys were really good in terms of just the kind of logistical changes that happened. So, doors went up, walls went up. All kinds of stuff, literally within days of asking. And equipment was never a shortage of equipment, really. We wanted some extra stuff because as we learned as we were developing what we needed, and suddenly things were delivered. And then during the main pandemic, there was lots of redeployment, lots of non-clinical faces doing, even the simple things like helping us don and doff all our PPE. That was a really important role, which lots of non-clinical people were involved with. And then also in the kind of admin side, lots of our finance staff were redeployed to HR, to recruitment hubs, to try and get through all the people that wanted to come and work and volunteer. And so there was a lot of, as I said, common purpose, doing the right thing. And then even in the recovery phase, I don't think we ever felt pressured as clinicians to kind of increase capacity where it wasn't safe to. And I think that was also really important for us as we kind of got to over the first kind of surge and the first peak, as we kind of got to trying to get back to some sort of normal.
Thanks for that, AK. That's great. And again, I think the examples that we've all felt about how our clinical teams have worked really close with non-clinical teams is just exceptional. We really have genuinely pulled together throughout this whole period. So I'm going to come to you now, Beth. And so my question to you is, the value makers have shown an amazing support and compassion to one another throughout this year. What should we be doing to continue that momentum going forward?
So I think during the pandemic, I don't know how many of our value makers are actually currently in the Value Maker Facebook group, but just as personally outside of, the work environment, it was actually a bit of a lifeline for me. I was isolating at home with a 2-year-old by myself, and all the fellow value makers all across the country were posting in their, mental health check-ins, sharing best practice, struggling with, new guidance that was coming out all the time, and people were just posting in that group, and, everybody sort of rushed on to help each other. And I just think that is available in a such a quick concept that's just something we really, really do need to continue. And remembering that we're not just value makers, in the work sense, but also, we're all friends and colleagues as well. And that actually not only in that work environment, but also in a personal level, like I say, for me, it has just been invaluable, and I really do want that to continue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Beth. I mean, I think it just shows, doesn't it, when you really need your colleagues and you need that support, thank goodness we've got the Value Makers Network, because we've actually come into our own, and we're not just a network just because we're a network, we've helped each other through this. So it's great to hear firsthand how you've used that support network. Right, so I'm juggling here because I've got lots of questions coming in on Slido, so I'm going to do one here that's for all of you. So I'm going to ask you all in turn. And the question is, how are you keeping your teams motivated given such a challenging period? Now it seems we are potentially got quite a bit of a way to go yet. So I'm going to start with AK.
I think it's quite difficult. I think people are getting a bit apprehensive about what the future may hold, especially as we build to the winter. And I don't think anybody wants to go back to the kind of situation that we had back in April, where there was lots of people working residents and lots of shifting of people around. And I think we also want to try and maintain all the kind of other work that's going on to try and keep going with. In April, we stopped everything, and now we have to keep going. And so I think part of it is trying to plan ahead and learn from what we did last time. So we had, some things worked, some things didn't work. And so this time we're going to try and reflect back, learn, and then and try and reassure people that we have got it right, or we are trying to get it right this time.
Absolutely. And Caroline, what's your thoughts?
You're right, it's hard, isn't it? I spend, the question that I'm asking most people right now is, well, have you had a holiday? And have you spent some time with people you really care about? And have you spent some time doing what matters to you that isn't work? And asking all those questions, because actually the next few months are going to be difficult, and they're going to be different. So that's one thing, they're going to be very different. And we do have a different set of circumstances and a different set of tools to get through the next few months. And we know that, patients will present differently and for different lengths of time and all that stuff. So that it will be different, which helps people, I think. And then I think, as you were just saying, okay, I think there's something about, most people that work in health want to learn and improve. And so there is a lot of learning. There's a lot of science and research that's come out of what we've just done. There's a lot of basic learning of process, and actually concentrating on that kind of helps people get through it. I mean, the other thing for me, Stan, is there's just like a healthy dose of realism. We're here to do our jobs. We will look after you. And we, my organisation, I'm sure like yours, is providing lots and lots of kind of psychological support for our staff where they need it. But actually, we have got to just be quite realistic. The next few months are going to be quite hard, but they're going to be different. And then the other thing for me is there is a longer game in this, and we will come out of it, and we'll take some good stuff out of it. The opportunities to transform technology are fantastic. Look at us now, as you say, who would have thought it? The opportunities for our patients to access services differently are fantastic, and we're doing stuff that I thought was going to take me kind of 3 or 4 years to do. Actually, some of that stuff's happening now. The opportunities to transform the finance profession are fantastic. So there are some really good things. There are sunny uplands, but we've got to get through the next period, which is going to be quite hard. So a bit of realism and a bit of optimism.
Yeah, and I think there's some consistent messages in both of what you said. That it's dead important as we stand here now to look after each other as well as the people that we care for within each of our hospitals, because we need that as much as they do to a certain extent. So I'm going to go now over to Beth. She's looking there waiting. What do you think? What's the thing that you do to keep everyone motivated?
Within our organisation, we've got some great members of the finance team who are health and wellbeing champions, and they have done some amazing work at just reminding everyone to take that time away from work, and that if we were in the office, we used to do the Friday quiz, for example, and we all used to gather around a desk, and we've put that time in the diary so that that's still available. We've had quizzes that have been after our weekly team catch-ups. scavenger hunts, that kind of thing. So I think it's actually been really great at, you know, keeping morale up while we've all been at home, and I think they've done a really good job in doing that, and I think that's something that we definitely need to carry on. You know, we're still full-time working from home, the whole department, so it's been really good in keeping the team together and making sure people are having conversations. We're having our virtual Macmillan coffee morning on Tuesday, and we're going to go into groups on Teams and, you know, just have that time. So I think that's really, really important, as well as keeping focus on everything else. I think it's definitely, you know, something that's really vital to make sure we all keep ourselves, you know, keep going.
Thanks for that, Beth. And we heard, didn't we, from Claudia and Christine earlier, just the importance of us being inclusive in the way that we keep connected as teams, even though we might not physically be together. So I absolutely agree with what you've said there. Right, now this is going to be an interesting one, because this is very topical, given what we've discussed at the conference so far. And I'll be really interested to hear your 3 different perspectives on the answer. So what does success look like for NHS finance post-COVID? I'm going to start with you this time, Beth.
I think it's really, really important that everything that we're learning about, you know, the kind of colleagues that we work with and the way that we work, I think it's really important that we, you know, when we finally get to a point where this is, you know, not as high pressured and we are sort of hopefully going to be coming out of it, I think it's really important that we take that time to sort of, you know, debrief and just say what can we learn from what we've done, what went really well, what didn't go as good, you know, and sort of make sure that things that went really well, we continue to do those in our teams, you know, like that going back to the health and wellbeing aspect. I think it's really important that, you know, once, you know, hopefully we'll go back in the office or doing, you know, moving into a new hybrid working world, that we still keep that up. And I think that's what a good finance department, you know, a good finance function is going to look like going forward. It's taking on those things that have worked really well and making sure that we, you know, we keep them going, and that they're not just a direct response to COVID, but they're how we, you know, want to work in the future.
Brilliant, Beth, absolutely. And Caroline?
Okay, so it's a really, really good question, isn't it? So I'm obliged to say, when I think about the future, that a lot of it is digital and data enabled, and I feel quite strongly that our profession has is kind of in the foothills of that, really, and I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about this. So good looks like more of that, and our ability to help our clinical and operational colleagues look into the future using our kind of sort of our capability with data and doing more with analytics and so on. So that's one part of it. I guess this whole thing about kind of using digital platforms and using digital technology differently is interesting, isn't it? Because I'm really struck by our different experiences in the last few months. So I work in a hospital, so I've been kind of bouncing off to the hospital and talking to people, whereas lots and lots of people in our communities are at home, as Beth was describing. So we have got some different things to think about. But I do think that we are going to be working more flexibly and more differently in the future, and I think that will be good, but we need to figure out what that means for us as human beings. The other thing that I wanted to say was success for me would look like we've really helped engineer a more simple way of doing business in the NHS that is less transactional, because we're all in the same family and we're collegiate, and the internal market is very different now, isn't it? So we don't have one. And I think we should be helping reorganise that and allowing our colleagues in the Department of Health and NHS England to have the right conversations with central government and Treasury to get a better settlement for health. And so I think we have a duty as a finance profession to try and engineer some of that, so they don't see us squabbling over the money internally, but they see us making a really good case because we're using the money effectively to get more money for the public sector. So those are my 3 things.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's probably one thing that, for us working together as systems, has been stronger through the last 6 months than probably ever before, because we're having different conversations, much more constructive conversations. So absolutely. AK, what's your thoughts? What would you see a perfect finance department looking like from your perspective?
Well, I think it's a combination of without repeating, you know, technology, hybrid working. I think there's a lot of clinical change, pathway changes with more virtual consultations, and there's going to be a lot of change in terms of how that's going to work. And so the kind of building it's an opportunity to build a payment system that kind of supports that. There's been shifts already, and I think now we can take our time a little bit, because we've bought a bit of time to try and work out what we think a payment system of the future is going to look like and how it can work in this new kind of technologically enabled world with probably less hospital or less secondary care visits and more stuff based in the community. And so the funding's going to have to kind of probably go with that. So I think a more joined up finance world, both within each other, so between primary, secondary and tertiary care, but also within the clinical environments as well.
Absolutely. I think there'll be loads more conversations to come around that. I think the whole way we incentivise or penalise it's got to change, hasn't it? I think everybody's up for that and doing something a little bit different, so I'm sure there'll be lots more conversations about that. So I've got another question here. And again, it'd be good to hear your different perspectives on this. So given quite a lot of finance people have been working from home during the pandemic, how do we maintain the excellent relationships that we've developed with our clinical colleagues? So from Beth, some practical examples, how have you done that? I'm sure from Caroline, you'll have seen how you encourage that to happen. And from AK, what do you want to see and how do you want to interact with your finance team if they're not sat in the same room? So I'm going to start this time with Caroline.
So it's all about communication, isn't it? And so, you know, where I've been a business partner or done business partnering or kind of run those services, it's all about communicating and understanding the service. And in the old days, that was getting up close and standing in the shoes of your colleagues and understanding what their world was like. And you know, so I've just spent the last hour walking around our theatre complex talking to some of my surgical colleagues just to get my head around how they're doing their recovery. That's a really privileged position that I hold, and I'm really lucky to be able to do that. How do you do that in this new world when you're at home? Well, I suppose it's similar, but just using different channels of communication. I mean, I think, you know, it's still possible to have informal relationships and build good relationships and trust like this. Well, probably not like this actually, because I can't see who I'm talking to apart from Suzanne. So you know, I think you can do that, and I've noticed myself, so most of the work I'm doing across my system is over a screen, but I notice like little informal WhatsApp groups springing up and people text each other, and then, you know, one of my colleagues will ring me straight after we've had a big video conference because they didn't like what's, you know, so all the same behaviours go on. So I think it's possible. I was really struck with something Beth said earlier where you were talking about virtual scavenger hunts. And for the life of me, I can't work out how you do that. So I wouldn't mind you talking about that. So, because I think I want to steal the idea. But I think it's the same good communication, relationship, trust building that you do. You just have to do it with multiple other channels.
Yeah, and what's your thoughts, AK?
As Caroline was saying, I think communication. I think virtual meetings have their purpose. I mean, I quite like them because it means I don't have to lose half a session of a clinical day to go and travel across town or to a different site, or I can stay within the theatre complex and be available if I need to. So I can actually attend more meetings now than I probably previously could. Undoubtedly, that there is probably some a change in focus. So, you know, we had a lot of work with costing and coding and stuff in our teams that probably hasn't had the focus it probably we had. We built up some momentum and we've kind of lost a little bit of that. We're trying to build that up again. I think getting communication and language right is important. What you talk about as finance professionals is probably not what we talk about as clinicians, and less tables and numbers and more pictures and kind of patient related stuff and outcomes is probably the way to go. And yeah, I think that's probably where we're going now, is using these kind of, you know, what used to be in the corridor conversations are now phone calls or texts or WhatsApps, and it's just being open and available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with both of you again. So the communication thing is key. I mean, I don't think I ever would have thought I'd be WhatsApping any of my DOF colleagues until this happened. I certainly didn't think I'd be talking to 500, 600 people on the Value Makers Conference until this happened. So it has opened up the communication channels. Maybe too much in some places when your phone's going off and you're still getting phone calls from these people. but it is great. It's just how we use it effectively, I think, and adapt it to the different people we're talking to, particularly your point there, AK. And what do you think, Beth? An expert in the field, as we've just heard.
Yeah, so I think I agree with what AK said about our clinicians. You know, even though they are super busy at the moment with everything that's going on, they are becoming more available, and that, you know, that what would have been an hour out of their diary to have a budget holder meeting, you know, or a finance meeting is now a Teams meeting that can, you know, finish when you're done, kind of thing. So actually, I think it's just about making sure that while, you know, in the role that I used to hold when I worked in surgery, about making sure that we still make ourselves available for our clinicians when they need us and answering our questions. And just because we're not physically meeting them every month doesn't mean we can't meet them on Teams, doesn't mean we're not available on email, on phone. And I think it's really important that our clinicians know that we are still here. Oh, just because we're not all sat in one room in an office, it doesn't mean that we're not doing exactly the same job as we were before. So I think, you know, that's something really to focus on, that we're still here for our clinicians who need us, and any questions they've got, make sure they still come to us.
Yeah, and I think it just sets a challenge to us, doesn't it? You know, we in the finance world need to provide the information, communicate it in a way that the receiver wants to see it and they can relate to it. So that's a massive challenge, and there's loads of examples. I think if you go and see Beth's session, I'm sure she will share those as part of the best value market stalls, won't you? So I've got another question coming in here, which I've just got time for, and it's a specific one for you, Caroline. So it says, what has been the most challenging thing to overcome during the pandemic, and what was the difference between being a chief executive through COVID and being a finance director?
Right. So the most challenging thing.
I've stuck two questions in for one there. I'm trying to get value.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, well, actually, can I do the second one first? Because that's probably easier. The second one. So I think actually the leadership challenge is the same. And for those of you that have been in leadership jobs, we probably have the same things to think about how you run teams, how you get people to work together, how do you get large groups of people to do stuff they may not have wanted to do, and all that. And that is the same. I don't think I was a particularly good CFO, so I think I've made the challenge relatively easily. My current CFO is much better than I was. He was my deputy, so, and we know each other well. So, but there's always that thing, isn't there, where you step up within an organisation, you have to reinvent yourself, and that's an important lesson I think I've learned. I think it's probably taken me a while to get into my stride, if I'm honest. I think it takes a while just to reassert yourself. So there was that. But I've got a brilliant team, so actually they made it easy. In terms of the most challenging thing, actually there's some quite personal stuff. So I remember being in the consultant car park early one morning, bumping into a female colleague who just said goodbye to her kids. This was way back in early March, and she said, "I don't think I'm going to see them for 3 months," and she didn't. And at that kind of realization that people are making those massive personal sacrifices in a time that's really confusing, and then your job is to lead the organization through the equivalent of like the worst fog you ever saw, because you don't really know what's coming on. And what do you do when you're in fog and you're on a mountain? You sort of cling on to people, you hold people close. So I had to do a lot of that, and these people have seen me as the strategy guy and the finance person and the, you know, the all that stuff, and they hadn't seen that side of me. So having to exercise that and show people it, and then take some of their some of the difficulty they're experiencing. That was quite challenging. But I'm really proud of how the organisation responded, and how actually the big thing that's come out of it for me is we're all taking care of each other, and people talk about it all the time. So that's the thing. But yes, it's a tough gig, but it's brilliant. I recommend it. I will never leave the finance tribe, I promise.
That's good to know. We wouldn't let you go anywhere. So I've got loads of questions, but unfortunately everyone out of time. So I've just got a chance to say a huge thank you to all three of you for being so open and honest with your answers to us. And thank you to everybody who's put a question forward on Slido. I think it's been a really great session. So thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you
Bye.
later. Okay, so that brings that session to a close, which leaves us just one final event as part of our session today. Maybe the bit that you've all been waiting for. I certainly know it's the bit that I'm most excited about. It is time for our Value Makers Awards. Woo!
Hospitals welcome to the stage your awards host this afternoon. It's Suzanne Robinson.
Yes, it's me. I'm here again. You've got the same host as you had for the rest of the day, but I am actually delighted to be doing this. It is such a great opportunity for us to celebrate some individuals and some teams who've worked tirelessly over the last 6 to 12 months. So it's a real privilege to do this part. I am sharing this with colleagues here from the team and from the FFF team, so you'll hear a bit of cheering, a bit of weeping. We're trying to create the same atmosphere that we would have in the conference itself. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so our first award is for Finance Expert Award, and this award recognises an individual who keeps their technical skills up to date with the latest thinking in finance and focuses on the challenges facing the NHS, and someone who also supports others in their team to do their job. So let's take a look at the shortlist. So we have Samir Rada from Alder Hey Children's Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. We have Gavin Rush from the Countess of Chester. We have Claire Seddon from Manchester University NHS FT. And we have got Rachel McGilvraith from Manchester University NHFT. So congratulations to all of you. And the winner is Gavin Rush from the Countess of Chester. Woo-hoo!
Gavin is a very active member of the Value Maker Network and often presents and shares his technical expertise at events and conferences. He is also the first point of call within the finance team at his trust when colleagues need technical help. Gavin's colleagues say he is constantly working to improve finance processes and has implemented new and efficient ways of working at the Trust that have reduced duplication, ensured information is robust, and have freed up capacity, resulting in reducing month-end close down for income, reporting from 5 days to 3.
Well done, Gavin. A brilliant achievement there. Okay, let's get on to the next award. So this is the Make Change Happen Award. And this is all about an individual who embraces and enables change as part of their daily job. They develop and implement new ways of working and doing things to improve the services they give. This was a highly tough competition to judge. We had loads of applications, but we have a shortlist and these are as follows. The finance team at East Cheshire NHS Trust, Taryn Lake from Sunderland CCG, Stuart Leith from United Lincolnshire Hospitals NHS Trust, and the number one place to work team at Alder Hey Children's Hospital. And the winner is the number one place team to work at Alder Hey.
The number one place to work project team was set up to evaluate areas of improvement within the finance department and to implement new initiatives that supported staff satisfaction and well-being. The team is made up of a small, diverse group of value makers from all areas within the finance department, and their innovative events and projects have empowered individuals to collaboratively improve the working environment for all across the department, especially this year during the pandemic.
Super, well done Alder Hey. I've seen some of the work they've done, it is pretty awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next award, which is Drives Value and Patients and Taxpayers Award. So this is someone who strives to increase value in every piece of work that they undertake, but someone who also thinks like a patient but acts like a taxpayer when at work. Not easy. So our shortlist is Toby Goodwin from East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust, Sam Johnson from East Cheshire NHS Trust, Morjan Sani from North Tees NHS Foundation Trust, and Tobias Mill from Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust. And our winner is Morjan Sani.
Morjan led and delivered on a clear vision and strategy for the Medicines Optimisation Department in getting the best value from medicines whilst ensuring high quality care and experience for patients. Working with the Finance Department, they were set a savings target of £1 million for the year and delivered an outstanding £2.4 million savings. This was a significant contribution towards the total trust target of £9 million.
Okay, our next award is the Team Player Award, and this is about somebody who engages fully with their team and contributes beyond their personal job description. So someone who builds relationships across departments and goes above and beyond to collaborate effectively with others. And our shortlist is James Bowles from East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust, Matt Clark and Fiona Downs at North of England CSU, Amy Denning from Airedale NHS Foundation Trust, and Kaylee Mitchell from Derbyshire Community Health Services. And our winner is Amy Denning from Airedale.
Amy has been recognised by several colleagues at her organisation for going above and beyond in her role to support the team and to lead on FFF within the department. Despite starting her role at the Trust just as the pandemic hit, Amy's colleagues say she has done an amazing job in bringing the team together digitally and in leading on the Trust's Level 1 submission for accreditation. Her team say she has made outstanding efforts to ensure the well-being of staff are supported and has implemented several social and fun initiatives to keep morale high at the Team Connected.
Okay, so that moves us on to our next award, which is our FACE Award. So this is for an individual, and this value maker actively engages with and teaches clinicians about finance and coding in their organisation, and has also been a huge supporter of FFF's Finance for Clinicians and Managers events. He's travelled the length and breadth of the country to deliver workshops and consistently receives outstanding feedback. This value maker has also produced fantastic content for our FACE teaching resources and has been invaluable support to ensure the network delivers relevant and up-to-date information. The winner of our FACE Award, and I know this chap and he is really good, so well done to Gareth Jones from Manchester NHS Foundation Trust. Okay, well done Gareth, well done. Excellent. And this is our final award, and this is our new one that we brought this year, which is our Regional Engagement Award. And this is an annual one that recognises the region with the greatest progress in terms of engagement with FFF and staff development. So this region started their engagement journey with just 23 value makers in September 2019, but by March 2020 they'd reached 523, and now they're over 600, which gives them more value makers than any other region in the whole of the country. They were the first region to have every FD sign the FD declaration, and that shows their outstanding commitment to staff development. I'm sure you know which one this is. You'll certainly know if you're the winner. It is East of England. Very special mention actually to Tiffany Leaf and Darryl Cockman, because their hard work in supporting the engagement for the East of England has been absolutely phenomenal. So just a special shout out to them. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our awards ceremony. Thank you so much to everybody who put an application in. Special congratulations to everybody who was shortlisted, and even more so for those who won an award. That brings us to the close of not only the awards, but to the whole conference. So there's one last thing for me to do before I close it, and that's just to invite my colleagues here from the FFF team, because they have worked so hard to put this whole programme together for you today and to run it in the way that we've done it. So I want to say thank you to all of them especially, and we really hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next year. Thanks everybody. Bye.